from a data perspective, like Trump was like the most popular Republican, like in I don't even know how many decades with black people. That to me was like a really weird juxtaposition. Like black people definitely voted for Trump way more than they voted for other Republican presidents. But when Kanye supported him, it was like he supported like the worst thing ever. It was just like a weird thing. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
We're back. Hello. Greetings. We're here for the politics. We're here for the culture. We're doing a little popcorn. We're constantly evolving this. You know, one of the things we were just talking about right before we started recording is like, as you know, if you've been with us, especially since the beginning or the early days, we're always evolving the pod. And I imagine a confluence of circles, Stephen. And one of these circles is, yes, I'm talking to you. One of these circles is how we authentically are and were on these. Am I throwing you off right now?
Are you doing like an ikigai thing?
Yeah, I'm doing an ikigai. The Alfalfa podcast ikigai, right? One of those circles, perhaps the most important, is how we got started was meeting up on these Wednesdays, talking crypto, talking shop, talking politics, talking life. And the way we did that is we wouldn't pick like one topic and just deep dive on that for 3 hours, unless that one topic warranted that. Sometimes that did happen.
It happens sometimes.
And other times we would just jump around until we exhausted the idea. So the line, the authentic line is when we've exhausted the idea. And oftentimes some ideas take 15, 20 minutes and others take 2 hours. So that's what we're trying to do. That's just so you understand that's what we're attempting to do. And now, since we're recording our conversations, another one of these circles is obviously, well, what you enjoy most and what is most interesting, useful, valuable, and accessible and entertaining to you, the watcher, the listener. So we always want to hear from you guys. So actually a really great segue is hop in our Discord. You know, that's kind of the thing for this episode. It would mean a lot. Hop in our Discord. Let us know what you think of the episode. The link to that is at alfalfapod.com. It's below in the show notes as well. I think we've got like 600 plus people in the Discord now, and the quality is just amazing. You know, we have a lot of listeners, but our best, our favorite people that are in there engaging with us are in the Discord, and it's where all the after party happens. So, and Stephen apparently has an open loop that he has to close. Don't do that too often, by the way, please. I want the juice here on the pod. I'm going to save the fun for the Discord. All right. So what's next? Oh, what are we covering? We're covering in this episode Christopher Columbus. We're going to dive into Mr. Columbus and his shenanigans and the holiday and some deeper layers underneath that. And Kanye West. Kanye West has been all over social media and the news, taking over everything. And there's a lot to that. There is a messy, gray conversation there. So those are the three things we're going to hit.
Well said.
Let's do it.
Yeah. I just got back from this trip, right, from Spain and France. And I'm like sitting in the office on Monday with all of our employees. And I'm looking at the calendar and I realize on the calendar it says Christopher Columbus Day and Indigenous People Day.
Oh, good segue.
And in one part of my mind, I'm like, oh shit, I forgot to tell everyone they have a federal holiday off. And I was like, well, kind of like a passive aggressive holiday schedule in general. Like, I'm like, well, you could take this federal holiday off. I will be here, but you certainly could
You're hilarious.
Take this off. And part of me is like, well, it might be nice if no one else is in the office and I can get some stuff done. But other ones, I'm like, I don't know if we should give them off.
Or you could be like, we don't honor this genocidal maniac with a day
right.
off.
So there were okay. So Google Calendar suggests two names of the federal holiday. Like it suggests Christopher Columbus and Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to know where you guys kind of fall on either side of this argument, because I feel like 10 years ago this wasn't even a topic that just kind of got broached. It was like, yeah, it's Columbus Day. We take off today, and that's fine. I also noticed bifurcation in the bond market randomly took off. The stock market was open. So I don't know. After we decide who's to blame, we can put blame on the stock market maybe.
First of all,
anyway.
I like that you're making it very clear what it's like to work for you. You know, like let's not think that you can come in and cruise around taking all these federal holidays and optional holidays.
Why would you?
Why
We're not
would you?
saving the manatees here, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
So I guess the conversation here is
sorry.
Oh, good one. I have never seen that movie. That's bad. I got to add it to the list.
Oh, add that to the list.
I know.
Oh, there's
I
a
know.
great Ben
I bet
Ben
some-
Affleck speech in there. If you want some motivation, Ben Affleck, YouTube. Kind of cringy, but also motivating.
I bet some people would put that in their goat movies. We actually need your goat movies at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll add it to the list.
All right. So the conversation here is Christopher Columbus good or evil, right? I mean, should it have been renamed Indigenous Peoples Day, or like what's the history here? And I think that this is like a classic case of rewriting history. It's what we love to do most. And I'm okay. So this is something that I think about a lot, but I don't think about the Christopher Columbus aspect of a lot. I think about what it represents. So I had this, I think I've said something along the lines of this before, but a person alive today who's living with this idea of, I want to be a great human being, okay? We're setting out to accomplish, to succeed, to pioneer. And we're all going to die one day. And most of us will not be remembered for 2 weeks beyond that. I recently read that. And beyond our inner circle, okay? Some of us get to the point where we become some sort of symbol for our society because of our accomplishments. And Ernest Becker argues that, we talked about this in the God episode, I think, that all of the constructions and accomplishments and achievements of humanity are essentially these ego projects, these immortality projects, Ernest Becker calls them, in the face of your own mortality. It's a way to say, I was here and I made the world a better place. And it's also a way to give meaning to life itself. And every individual is working within society with tools, laws, resources, and rules that are available today. What I do, what I say, I may push the boundaries, but I am still a human being in 2022. Whatever I've done, if I'm so extreme and I'm so outside the rules of life today, or I say things and do things outside the Overton window, or I even start to break the law, well, I end up in jail. I'll never succeed because I broke the rules. I didn't play the game fairly, right? And a lot of people who are good people end up in that. So that's also another side, especially historically. Justice was cheap and unavailable to most. Equal rights were not available to most. So to get to the point in which you've achieved something great in life is a remarkable thing. And yet, to leave the philosophy side of it aside, Ernest Becker would argue even that is not worthwhile. You know, it's like, why are we doing these things? Well, we're doing them, let's say, to make the world a better place while we're here. So I don't know Columbus. We've never talked. I wasn't there at that time. I don't know what kind of guy he was like. But I can tell you this. I know a lot of people have opinions on what he, quote unquote, accomplished. But Columbus aside, let's look at this. Look at the number of people who have achieved to that level, who then get to a point that after they're gone or while they're still here, not only are they sort of worshipped by society and appreciated, but they get to a point where a statue is created in their honor. This is actually something I said on the Bankless
I took
episode.
a picture in front of that statue while I was in Spain. Sorry.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, the family wanted a picture.
Where is that statue?
It's in Barcelona. There's
Barcelona.
next to the water. Here's like a Columbus statue pointing towards the ocean.
There's probably many.
Oddly, not in direction North America. I tried to figure that out, but anyway.
So he was wrong all along.
Yeah, he was.
So, there's this aspect that statues are built around these people. 50 years go by, 100 years go by, 1,000 years go by. Say in the case of think of all the people that over time, eventually their statues get torn down, their names are destroyed, their legacies are ruined and tarnished because of our interpretation through our lens today of what is right and wrong. Thomas Jefferson, the asshole slave owner. There's so many examples of no matter how good you are, a Socrates, a Plato, Aristotle, an Alexander the Great, no matter how great you are, there's a bone to pick with you as time goes on. Why? Because relatively, if you were alive today, we'd have a problem with you. What you do is illegal or frowned upon. And so my whole position on this is people should be celebrated for what they did, the good that they achieved during the time that they did achieve it. And they should not be looked at through the present day lens of what is good and bad. When we do that, we destroy our own humanity. We literally take away the legacies of the shoulders of the giants whose shoulders we stand upon. That's actually disgusting, in my opinion. It's not disgusting what Christopher Columbus did, and maybe, okay, look, again, I don't want to go so, let me draw a line there, because I don't know what Christopher Columbus did. I don't know. I know there's a lot of historians that say they know, and I'm not educated on this topic, but I also don't know what Socrates did or Thomas Jefferson did or or Gandhi did. And there's all these controversies around all these people, whether it be Gandhi or Mother Teresa or Christopher Columbus, all of a sudden, or fucking, what's her name? Coco Chanel, sleeping with Nazis. Well, there's all these examples of what people do. You didn't know about that?
No.
So
Burn the purses.
yeah, apparently
shoes.
that was the way she blew up.
Canceled.
What I am getting at is that I think what we're mostly seeing is a symptom of cancel culture to a certain degree. And while people make mistakes, we have to be careful, and I don't love this phrase, but not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are still genuine accomplishments here. I don't know if this is the case for Christopher Columbus, but I know it's the case for a lot of people that have achieved in society specifically. So I'm not concerned with the Columbus thing as much as I am with this, how we treat these great people from the past.
I am generally aligned with you. The George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, even Thomas Jefferson stuff really grinds my gears. I have very mixed feelings on Columbus. I'm very Italian, and a lot of Italian families really like to uphold Columbus. Was his real name Cristobal Colombo?
The Spanish flag, he's an Italian explorer. You're right.
Yeah, we like to I have a. Hey, let me read you a quote from a thing that I came across. Columbus and his men seized Caribbean women as sex slaves and sent attack dogs to maul naked Indians and disemboweled other natives who resisted conquest. During Columbus's second voyage, Columbus rounded up 1,500 Arawak Indians, the first Indians he met, and shipped 500 to Spain, where 300 were sold into slavery. The other 200 died along the way. When Columbus landed in 1492, the Arawak population was 100,000. By 1514, it was 32,000. By 1542, 200 were left.
Okay, so full-blown genocide.
Is that because of the disease or the murder? Maybe
Great
both.
question. Now, I think this is an interesting topic because I think anybody can look at this and see exactly what they want to see. A lot of people did die from disease. And I wouldn't blame Columbus for the disease stuff, even if he did sort of cause it as a first mover type thing, but that wasn't intention. And some other facts I thought that were interesting in the pro-Columbus camp was that at one point, Columbus actually executed people for mistreating the natives and was actually arrested himself for this and sort of dragged through the streets and mocked and then shipped home in chains. So I've had a hard time reconciling how this guy who seemed to be all over the place, he seemed to be greedy in search of gold and treasure and fame. He seemed to be incompetent. There's numerous stories about his crew rising up against him, about him taking credit for seeing the land when somebody else did it. There are stories of him in his own, sort of kind of diary of it. He tells a story of raping a native woman, which is kind of gnarly. But then at the same time, you hear these other stories of him like going out of his way to protect the people, but also he enslaved them. And then sort of like it becomes difficult to place the exact blame. Like he wasn't the only guy there, but also all this very bad stuff did happen. And I don't know how to interpret it, to be honest. And like I said, I think anybody can look at this and see what they see. And I am very like about like viewing people who are in history like through the lens of what you think is right or moral today. But also like, you know, some things are always bad, like, you know,
raping and pillaging
and genocide.
Genocide is always bad. Not to make it sound less bad, but he's one of many people that were doing that. He just so happens to be the one under examination because there's a day named after him and he, quote unquote, discovered America. So, you know, he's under examination as he should be. But like, was common practice, you know?
It was. And when he landed there, the natives from the Caribs, like the Arawat people were like this like kind of passive people, and they were constantly being enslaved by this like
Previous
tribe, like who was on the island over, right? And I do think there is this sort of weird like perspective that some people give of like the native population in the U.S. Like, it's sort of like it's almost like patronizing or a little racist to a degree. They sort of lump them all together. And have you ever heard of like the noble savage trope? It's like this like thing you see in the movie, right? Where like the Native American character is this like, you know, strong, like calm, wise, who's like one with the land, and he's just like free from all like the savagery of like the conquerors. It's like the magic black man trope, which you see in movies a lot, where like, you know, Morgan Freeman's God in the movie, and it like pops up a lot. It's like when like you have like, you know, white people writing stuff and they just like envision these characters in like a particular light. But like Native American culture, like, and I grew up with like a lot of exposure to this because my grandmother was like, you know, Native American. She used to always like try to impart this history to us. Like it was a messy thing. Like some of the tribes were peaceful. Some of the tribes were like bloodthirsty and savage, and there were wars going on before they got there. And you hear people talk about like native land and how we took it from them. But like, I think an interesting example of this is like Mount Rushmore, for example, like the Black Hills. Like that land was owned by particular the Lakota people, I think, before we basically yoinked it from them in a very not cool move by the government. And then we like, I understand why people are like upset. Imagine you have sacred land and somebody just takes it from you and they like freaking carve the faces of the people who like take it from you. And they're like, I kind of get the gripe there. That's kind of messed up. But like they took the land from the Cheyenne people, like in the 1700s. Like they rolled up in there and just through force, they just took over the land. And I'm pretty sure the Cheyenne took that land from people before them. And like, it's like in my head, it's like, where do we stop playing this game? Like nobody's ever been the original person in one place ever. Like, because I don't even know if you can define exactly when that ape became like the first kind of human. And then he had that. It's like this like unknowable.
You can't ever do it.
Question. We just keep going back and back and back and back,
The
trying
only
to say
time
like
people
who
try
like,
to
took it
start
from who.
doing it is when we were less nomadic, right? So it's like, no, we're staying here. We're more civilized. We're building here, and when somebody comes in and takes it away from them, that's where we go, okay, wait a second, that's over the line. But that's been happening for all time, for as long as there's been humans. So yeah, it's a messy question, and it's all perspective. It's what you want to see, for sure.
Yeah. I just hate playing these games where it's just like an infinite loop of like sort of like where you could just never find, you can never fix the aggrieved party. It just goes back and back and back and back and becomes diluted in a particular way. And at a certain point, it's like, what are you even doing? But again, at the same time, I get it where there's like a point where we're like, should we honor this guy?
No, yeah, exactly. That's really the question. So I was just going to say, it's like, I find it so interesting how we celebrated this guy so much. Like all of us were around the same age. We grew up in school. It was like, this was a major focus of elementary school.
Yeah. Did you remember the song?
No.
You didn't have the song?
I don't remember a song.
In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Oh my God.
Okay, maybe.
That's how I know the year. I never forgot the year.
Oh my God. I think I know the year just It's implanted. There's also a great movie called 1492. Great movie.
I haven't seen it.
It's just so fascinating how much he was celebrated, though. And then all of a sudden, where did this happen? Again, I'm very uneducated on the topic of Christopher Columbus, but it seems like all of a sudden we woke up one day and these historians were like, nah, actually, we've uncovered that he was a rapist and a terrible person. How did that happen so suddenly? Like, what changed? This has been 500 years. Like, what happened?
I assume it took hold in like college culture first, but like
the narrative changed. On the
even
guy.
if we know that, like, how do you even teach history to like a 6-year-old? If they're like, how did we get here? Where did America come from? They're like, well, funny story about this. This stork came over from Spain and he just brought this little pile of people. And then no, or you just tell them like, well, Columbus came here. And then what do? Do you tell them he like raped and killed a bunch of natives and enslaved them? Or do you just be like, he just came over and founded the land and met the, like, what do you do? I don't know. Like, I don't want to, I don't have to explain these things to somebody when they're 7. Maybe you just don't teach it until later when there is a lot of nuance here though.
Yeah,
it's not a simple story.
You gotta jump into it right away, I think. I'm curious what you guys think of just kind of the more big picture concept I was talking through about how people change, perception of them changes over time. What do you guys think about that? Is it right to continue to kind of put them under a critical lens? Do we have this thing where we no longer celebrate great people? Like, that's what I worry about as well. I see this trend of like, nobody wants to be great anymore to that degree because it's like, what's the point?
Well, didn't they take Abraham Lincoln's name off like a high school in San Francisco?
I don't know, but it sounds very...
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
We've talked about before how we celebrate individual accomplishments less and less. I think Peter Thiel has this like speech where he talks about there's no ticker tape parades for individual accomplishment. There hasn't been for some time.
Interesting observation. Yeah.
Right. But to your point, Armand, should we criticize or I guess filter these individual historical accomplishments in today's norms and values? I don't think so. I agree. I would prefer that their statues and place in the history books remain, but let the current population, the current culture, like have that discussion. And in 50 years, that discussion might change, that analysis might change, but it's important to understand where we came from and our understanding and like whatever the analysis of that might change. But I think to kind of eradicate them from the history books for something,
I couldn't agree more.
Sins,
and I actually think it's actually a deeper issue that people are not really taking a serious look at. I think it says a lot about the psychology and nature of humanity today that you can look at the past with such a scathing, judgmental eye, and yet every single thing that is possible about the way you live today is because of the people that came before you and the things that they accomplished. Like, I just don't think, I think there's a negativity, and that negativity is only going to perpetually get worse and worse and worse, where now it is to the point where we view everybody through a critical lens, even the ones that are alive today.
Sure.
And we're even saying what you did last week is outdated, bigoted, obsolete, and not a value in present day society. So like, it's gotten to the point where we don't just judge the past and no longer pay respects to them, but we don't even do it for each other.
Right.
I think that's the problem. That's what I'm seeing that's happening in society.
Yeah,
I love celebrating people. I think it's very important to celebrate the individual.
It's almost impossible to celebrate someone's accomplishments now. Like, no matter how pure, there's always...
Yeah, it's like you remember You Didn't Build That?
Yeah, I mean, there's also like a BuzzFeed economic incentive to just throw the takedown article, like because just that financial incentive will always exist.
So we're just forgetting that everyone is human, right? Like, every single person is human, has their vices, and is going to make mistakes. The mistakes that they make should not take away from their accomplishments. What we are ultimately asking people to do is to be perfect. That's broken from the start. Like, nobody's ever going to be perfect. Like, look at what Alan Turing went through. Your
Right.
goat.
My goat. You're
Your
right.
goat.
But
Like,
wouldn't you agree that Christopher Columbus is way less perfect than like Jefferson? Like,
Yeah.
isn't there some
yeah.
room within that as
There
well?
should be, but because the terms are not.
What would make is there a line where you would be like, no, this person's out?
I mean, there has to be, and they should have never become, But then I ask, well, why did they become so famous in the first place?
Because the
Because for that
winners
time-
write history.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
So let's
So I don't know. That's a tough one.
let's transition a little bit from a controversial historical
Oh boy.
character to what we're talking about, like people now, like a controversial current
Are you
character
saying
we
he's
have.
the Christopher Columbus of our time?
Well, I mean,
You talking
excluding,
about Yeezus?
yeah, if there's a
Yeah, we're not saying that. That's
we're not
an
saying that because I was
analogy
like,
I'm
unless
saying.
there's a rape and murder I don't know about, maybe
yeah,
we
let's-
shouldn't draw
let's-
that exact parallel.
No, not
But
at all.
I try to purposely filter out a lot of pop culture stuff.
Yeah.
Despite my girlfriend's television choices, in the evening when we eat dinner.
What?
Yeah, sometimes pop culture shows up on the TV.
A little ET,
Weird.
a little entertainment
Yeah,
tonight.
I roll with it. I roll with the punches.
Okay, I like that.
Compromise is like at the core of good relationships, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, I try to avoid these headlines. But I've seen some that have like popped up, and I want to just get your guys' impact, like thoughts on them. I mean, one I saw was he got let back on Twitter, and he showed up on my feed, and within hours, it was quite incendiary. There's that.
I saw the tweet, by the way.
Like
I was
in-
like,
in real time.
Kanye. Oh, that's a weird tweet.
Yeah, so we can talk about that tweet. And then there was, while I was in Paris, in fact, there was a fashion show, he decided to wear, I believe it was a White Lives Matter T-shirt. So those are those two things. There might have been even more things that I missed, but this guy.
So what is the exact? So the exact timeline, I think, right, is Kanye has fashion show with like right wing provocateur Candace Owens, right? Wears White Lives Matter shirt, starts controversy, then has some feud, I think, with like a Vogue editor or
girl,
something.
yeah.
Gets thrown off of Instagram, and then I think he goes on Tucker Carlson,
Right.
gets interviewed about that, then gets back on Twitter and then tweets something possibly
You're acting like this
questionably
started
anti-Semitic.
like a week ago. This guy has been
I
on
think,
a rampage.
by the way, I think this happened. I'm just describing like 6 days, I think.
Right.
But yeah, this has also just been a thing that's happened because before this, obviously,
Before this was Gap
Well-
and Adidas.
well,
and-
no, before this, it was like, hey, Kanye likes Trump and he's wearing a MAGA hat. What the hell's going
Sure.
on with the world, right? Because I think that was so this has actually been going on for a while.
yeah.
I mean, like, so in my mind, I just quickly write this off to like some bipolar, manic, depressive individual, and I just move on with my day. But there could be more to read in about this, like broader topics, through line topics. So I don't know. Do any of these hit home? Maybe a broader societal topic? Anything else that we should kind of like maybe dive into a little bit?
I just feel like Kanye is like if you were to pick like a fulcrum for like the culture war, I feel like it's him. It's really interesting to me seeing like the right trying to kind of co-op him, but then he keeps blowing up in their faces like over and over and over again. And they like things he says, and they really like that he's like black and he says things that like black people like quote unquote shouldn't say. And they're like, and like they put him out there, but then like he blows up and tweets something about Jews, and then we have to like kind of pull it back. And it's also been interesting seeing like people on the left like seeing like, well, Kanye's he's fucking crazy, just the guy's lost his mind. We don't want to. You can't say these things. So he's like kind of inserted himself like right in the middle of this absolutely.
Is this like
crazy thing
that
that's
one
going on.
Dave Chappelle skit where it's like the race draft where like the Asians, the
racial
blacks,
draft,
the
yeah.
racial draft, they like select someone. Is it also like the political parties
It's the
are
political draft, yeah.
like, we the Republicans select in our first pick of the 2022 political draft Kanye West.
Dude, bring back Dave Chappelle.
Oh, God.
Or bring back the Chappelle Show, I should say. Oh man, this whole thing is yeah. So there's a lot of layers to this. Yeah, here's a few that I see that are pretty interesting. So first of all, I've been listening to Kanye for forever, since the very beginning. And I love hip hop, and I think his music is absolutely incredible. He's a genius. And I believe that all genius comes with a dose or more of madness. To really become as accomplished as he is and to take over the world stage as he's done requires a level of madness. I think his madness continued to spiral out of control. The seeds were already there in his DNA and his mind, or perhaps part nature and nurture dance between what was going on in his environment. Bit of narcissism going on that became a lot of narcissism, that became one of the most famous people on the planet, that became even more spiraled out of control to develop seems like borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder. Unfortunately, it's a very sad situation, honestly, to watch somebody like that. And if you watch the documentary, it's rough. It's rough watching the evolution of this man go from a young, hungry kid, optimist, big vision,
Very,
cocky,
but almost
yes,
pure-hearted though. At the
but
same
pure-hearted,
time,
yes, like respectful, wants to make shit happen, believes in himself, has a mother who believes in him so dearly, who is educated. He's educated. He's coming up and he's making it happen. And he gets pigeonholed into a role that he doesn't want to be in as like a producer. And then he's like, no, I can rap and I can do this and I can do that. And I'm going to take over the world. And he does. And he does. And it's incredible. But then along the way, he unravels. But as he's unraveling, the most interesting thing is that he's gaining more and more attention the more he unravels. And this is the part that's fucked up about Kanye, is that here's where I get frustrated. The people that have attention in the world are the Kanyes, the Kim Kardashians, the 15-year-old vloggers, and they're not talking about anything important. They're distracting everybody with absolute nonsense.
Hold up. You don't think Kanye's talking about anything important?
95% of the time, he's not. 95% of the time, he's talking about his own problems, his own divorce, his own scams, the people that he wants to hurt, kill, the people that he thinks are gay and stupid, the people that he disrespects on the internet, the people that were once... The role that he's playing now is like, he's worse than like Trump at his worst. He's like, you're on my team. If you're not on my team, you're dead. I will take you out. I will destroy you on social media with my hundreds of millions of followers and the attention that I have in the world. Dude, let me give one example. Kid Cudi, one of his best friends, right? Been through all of it together. They go back to the point where they've done mixtapes together, right? They've done an album together after both of them went through a hard time, Kids See Ghosts. It was a very spiritual album, beautiful album from a couple years ago. All of a sudden, Kid Cudi makes one comment and Kanye, that's like a maybe in the gray kind of stance on something. I forget what it was. It was about, I think, again, I'm not into this, into the ET side of stuff, so I'm not the right person for this. But he makes a comment about a mutual friend of theirs, and then all of a sudden, blacklisted. Kid Cudi, you're out. You dead. Like instantly. And he does that repeatedly to people. He does it, but that's because of his mental condition, clearly. He's at a point where his level of narcissism is so extreme that if Gap wants to do something that he doesn't want to do, they become his enemy. Everyone to him is his enemy. And if you don't play with him exactly how he wants to play, it's over. And what saddens me about the situation, like I was saying earlier, is like, these are the people that have the control. These are the people that control the narrative, that tell young people that just want to fit in and be cool, what to dress, what to wear, how to think. And that saddens me. This is the shit that people spend their time thinking about. And then you see the way that he treats other people, and that's what people think is like cool now. But it's not. It's fucked up how he's treating people. If you go to his Instagram, his own fans now sometimes come in and go, yo, yay, like this ain't it. Like this isn't it, man. Like you're going too far. You need help. You need to talk to your family. You need to talk. You don't need to publish this shit on social media. These are his fans, man. And so separating the music, the art from the genius is hard, from the character, I should say, from the personality is hard. But Kanye is one of those situations for sure where, my God, man, this guy is difficult to support.
Well,
in any
I,
way.
I want to just zoom back on one thing you said, where you said like 99% of this stuff doesn't matter, but like, and that might be true.
We can go into the stuff that
might be
is
true,
interesting,
but
by
the
way.
reason he is getting attention is because of a very particular subset of stuff that he does say, and he is getting attention because he's like sort of like he's sort of like broken ranks in a particular way. I agree with you, by the way.
No,
that
let's go into this. I think this is what's interesting.
Not of sound mind in many areas, but that doesn't mean
this was my
everything he
context.
says is crazy. And I think if you look into some of the stuff, there is some stuff in there. It is very like the essence of like a complex kind of messy
So
thing.
let's go into one of them, right? So like, what was the first event? Was it the White Lives Matter?
I think the first event was when he's like, I support
Recent.
Trump, and he was basically like, look, I'm black, and like I'm not supposed to do this because I'm black, and like that's fucking stupid. I can do whatever the hell I want, and like fuck you. He used different words, obviously, but that was the gist of it, and that got a ton of hate, and I don't know how much hate that was because of the Trump thing versus like the breaking ranks thing, and like
It's breaking ranks.
I observed
It was
that
just
a
so
lot,
unpopular
right?
with the
Like
black
that,
community.
like yeah. It's he said some stuff that was like probably a little bit crazy. Like the slavery is a choice thing was probably like a little crazy. I think unless there's some justification for that. I don't
will
know.
Justify it some way.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
there is, but like I think what he said about being black from an outside perspective seems to be true. It is like you look like this, so you don't support these people, you do support these people. And he was just I listened to him talk about it. He's kind of like, why? Like what are we getting? Why do I have to think this way? Don't tell me what to think. And that resonated with people. And I think it does spark a reaction. Like when you break with like ranks like that, when that group is really dependent on like keeping it all together, we can't have any defectors. Like that obviously causes a bit of a backlash.
I mean, it was a huge deal. I remember like basically every black celebrity was like, Kanye needs help when he said he was voting for Trump and supporting Trump. And I remember Snoop was on like Martha Stewart, some show, and he was just like, he made like literally like a public, statement to Kanye. He's like, Kanye, like call me, man. Like you need help. Like I'll help you out. Like your head's not straight, because it was such a stepping out of the narrative of what it means to be black and how to think. And I actually think what he did there was very interesting. And I think those are those 5% things that he does where it's like, you listen to him talk for 3.5 hours on Joe Rogan, and sometimes you're just like, dude, is the guy still there? Like, what's he talking about? But like for 30 minutes or 20 minutes, he was saying shit that was like, oh, okay. You're interesting. You're an interesting dude. Now, the White Lives Matter thing, that's interesting to me. And I like to dissect that whole idea of White Lives Matter, if you guys don't mind. So Black Lives.
Before we jump into
Yes.
this, because I know it's going to be a whole thing, because you said something that was really interesting to me. It was just like he got so much hate for supporting Trump from like this narrative perspective, but like from an impartial observer, like if you looked at the data, from a data perspective, like Trump was like the most popular Republican like in I don't even know how many decades with black people. That to me was like a really weird juxtaposition. Like black people definitely voted for Trump way more than they voted for other Republican presidents. But when Kanye supported him, it was like he supported like the worst thing ever. It was just like a weird thing. And I thought that was kind of interesting, but we can move on from this.
No, you're right.
Because I know this thing is gonna.
But it's not surprising that the loudest celebrities don't necessarily represent a whole group of people. Like
Yeah.
that's not surprising, right?
Twitter's not real life. Yeah.
Here's my analysis on blank lives matter. And I would love your honest reflections on this. Okay. Not the political movement and community organization Black Lives Matter, but the idea, right? The meme, okay? Black Lives Matter as an idea is a response to generations of injustice, racism, and just fucked up shit, okay, toward an entire group of people in this country, and you could say in the world in general. It's a very clear, coherent, actually like response. It's like we matter, we're equal, we matter just as much, And when our group is being attacked, it clearly makes sense to elevate the group that is under attack to say, we matter, to spark a movement around that, okay? To say another minority matters in response to that, like a Me Too type of response, I look at that and I go, okay, like true, like you matter too. Hispanics lives matter. Blue lives matter, you know. Or let me leave that one. Let me leave that one aside. Like, let's go like minorities, and you can look at that many ways, right? Persian lives matter. Let's look at that one.
There you go.
Okay, so saying Persian lives matter in response to Black lives matter to me is silly. It's wrong. It's the wrong time. It's not your time, bud. You just picked the wrong time. To say white lives matter, the reason I think that completely doesn't make sense, actually, is it isn't the same as saying Chinese lives matter, because these are groups that have been under attack. There has never been a time, as far as I'm aware, where the entire class of white people has been in the position that Black people were in. So do white lives actually matter? Absolutely. But why do we need to say that in that moment is the interesting part of it. What Kanye is doing is he's trying to say white lives also matter. This whole idea of Black lives mattering is true, but white lives also matter. But I think he's missing it. I think he's incorrect there, because it's not the conversation, it's not the time, and it doesn't address the point equally. You're saying Black lives matter in the first place because of the injustice. Where's the and then we could look at very specific data that shows where, like, white lives in general in the U.S., which we've talked about on this podcast, especially with police and arrests and things like that, are just as much under attack as Black lives. But that's where I think it's a little bit just like cheap, the response. Like, it's just cheap. It's just like he's doing it for the click.
For sure. I mean, that was my immediate thing was like, well, this is very controversial and
for the news.
And it's really great if you, line it up with a fashion line launch, like brilliant on his PR campaign and in kind of like intuitive sense to kind of provoke the crowd for attention, because it certainly did that. I would put that in like a 70% weighting of like what could explain this. There's also a minority part, 30% part that says like maybe he has some kind of compositional genius that by like putting the two things in comparison to each other, he's actually providing some like equal weighting between the two, between the semantics of Black Lives Matter and White Lives Matter. And maybe in people's brains, they put the two on par with each other, potentially establishing some level of like equality in your brain. I think that is a possibility.
Interesting.
Did you guys hear his reasoning for it?
No,
on
I
Tucker?
didn't. What did he say?
Tucker, the answer to why I wrote White Lives Matter on a shirt is because they do. It's the obvious thing.
So I figured that's why. I just think it's mostly then it's the stunt of.
It's you guys sound to me like you're just describing like anything that we would classify as like art, like because you like whenever art happens in some things like people say the same thing. This isn't the time for Colin Kaepernick. This isn't the time to take it. The whole point of it is that you do it at the point where it's not the time, but then your perspective on it just sort of like, obviously you just view it in terms of what is the position you hold at the time. Like if you love America and football, like you hate Kaepernick for doing that at the time. And if you believed in the stuff he was saying, then you love that. And you were like, rah, rah. Right. And if you believe that this isn't new for like Candace Owens, like Candace Owens has been doing this for forever. Right. And Kanye just kind of came along and basically just tagged along for the same shit she's been doing. So a lot of people who follow her are like, yeah, it's great. Now Kanye's with it too. And all the other people are like, no, this is terrible. And it's like, I don't know. Like I understand. I do understand all the perspectives. I feel it's very hard to like attribute like some sort of reason to it or malice or whatever, but for what it did would generate, if his purpose was to generate conversation or something or bring a spotlight, then you would say, wow, this is he did very well there, because that was the objective.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about it is that it's just true. Like, I don't think it's just true. And the conversation really should be that all lives matter. That's the right statement. That's the one that should be getting like proliferated out into the world.
Certainly
stop
a less
saying blue
controversial.
lives, Persian lives, white lives, black lives. Just say all lives. Like, that's the right response. But when you say white lives matter or all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter, that's aggressive.
But there is this need.
Let me throw this out there
Yeah.
too. Is it the equivalent of like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez going to like a Met Gala surrounded by rich people with a dress that says "Eat the Rich,"
or to tax the rich, right?
tax the rich,
Yeah.
or whatever? Like that. It's kind of. I'm not saying these two things are equivalent, but it's the same idea. You go to a setting
No, it
with
is.
something where like, and then you're like, boom, fuck you. Like they're both doing that, and then depending on your perspective at the time, you're either like, yeah, this was so sick, or I can't believe she did that. This is so what a hypocrite, or blah blah blah. I don't know. I have a hard time like being like, this is good, or this is bad, or this is, you know.
I mean, I do appreciate the frankness of his answer when he was being interviewed by Tucker, because he is an artist, and you know, I've had my own gallery openings, and I've
give
literally
some leeway to artists, right?
right,
We
and
do.
I've also had the like cliche comments. So like, what does this painting mean? And my first reaction in my head is like, I like the way it looks.
We like the art.
Like I like the way it just looks, and that's why I made it. And but then I felt this like also secondary urge to give a more complex answer and a story because it might sell better. But I do think it's the maybe the people looking in who they want their brain filled. There's some gap, and they're like, why did this happen? Where's the story? Where's the meaning behind it? And maybe we kind of fill in the blanks when there's just no blank to be filled. You know, I don't really think what he says is like all that important. Like, I think what he does is important. He sells shoes, he sells clothes, he sells records. Like, he impacts the stock price of Gap and Adidas. And if he didn't do any of that, like nothing what he would say would be that important.
He
or
kind
meaningful.
of, he's very Trumpy. He's very bull in China shop. He's blowing up his system. People are latching onto him like, yeah. And then he turns around and completely fucks them over. And they're like, oh God, why did we support this guy? And then the other people are like, it's just wild. It's just, he's like a cultural.
I'm telling you, like 5% of what he says is definitely worth listening to. Like, for example, he's willing to say that like one of the largest killers of the Black community is abortion.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like,
You
that's
know,
like his
how
big
pro-life
thing.
he is.
I didn't hear that one.
His big thing is
Yeah.
like, he's been very big on like Jesus, and like in the Tucker Carlson interview, he was wearing a pendant with like an ultrasound image of like a baby.
Right.
Like, that was the thing he had on him on the TV. That was the thing he chose to showcase. And one of the first questions was, he was just like, there's more Black babies killed in New York every year than born. And that was like
Right.
the thing he was focused on. That was like and that's like kind of mostly what I hear about him. I hear a lot of like abortion and Jesus stuff, and a lot of like, they can't tell me what to say just because I'm Black type stuff. Like, that's most of what I hear through the noise. But then, like Armand said, there's so much like crazy shit. Similar to Trump, you're just like, wait, what do you actually think? What do you actually believe? It's just like all over the place sometimes.
All over the place. My big thing with the whole Black lives, white lives, all lives is like, of course, I just think the whole conversation is kind of like annoying, to be honest. It's like, of course, all of these lives matter. And it just frustrates me that the conversation always comes in a way where one group's growth always comes at a cost to another. So I think it's like Candace Owens, one of the things she says is like the Black abortions problem, like the high level of abortion in the Black community. And that's the worst thing you could be in life, is like being born, you know, a Black baby, right? And the second worst thing you could be born is a white male. She's absolutely right. She's absolutely right. Like, today, in this day and age, like, a white male has no voice. Anything they say is like an offense to humanity. And so that's, again, at this whole idea of like, yes, of course Black lives matter, but why does it have to come at a cost to white males? Like, we've talked about this stuff so much already, but it's like, you don't have to make people suffer consequences today because of injustices that were applied or present in the past. And that's what's so annoying about all of this, and unproductive overall in the conversation of equality.
Yeah.
The movement of equality tends to be very unproductive and just a fashion show, honestly.
I feel like it's so unproductive to argue over like the black lives, all lives, blue lives, white lives, like because like we have this thing in the area of social media, right? Where like these sayings, they just come up, right? Where did that come from? Like sayings come up every day and you're like, wow. And it's almost like the saying is like specifically designed to exactly mean what it means to one person and exactly mean the opposite to the other person. And I don't think it's by design. I think there's this like concept of like mimetic evolution, right? Like
You
when
also
you're
called it semantic overload at another point. Like these phrases.
semantic
provide that.
overload is like a byproduct of this. It's like, but I don't think it's like intended in the beginning. But I think much in the same way that like a species ends up surviving and their genes pass on for particular reasons, like memes in the social age survive and propagate because they do particular things, right? So I think in this area of social media, like whatever way the algorithms are, everything, it's like it's sort of designed so that these sort of sayings, these tropes, these snippets come out, right? Where they're just so perfectly designed to trigger one side and like be everything the other side wants, and they just create this like conflict, almost as though they were designed that way. But I don't think they were designed that way. I think like there are millions of people tweeting millions of things, right? Much in the same way that they're like these genes trying to replicate throughout human evolution, and particular things catch on, they get likes, they get upvoted, somebody sees it, they add something to it, it grows like an arm, it goes, and then in the end, like something goes super viral, an idea, a saying or anything, and like nobody created it, but it like evolved to just stick out and to just be the thing that like nobody can even parse because it's so perfectly like the coin flipped on its side that everybody can see exactly what they want in it, and everybody tears themselves up over it. But it's like,
the
why?
coin on its side fucking analogy. I love that.
That's what like Trump did. Like Eric Weinstein said that. He said like
did.
Trump had an uncanny ability to flip a coin and it would just land on its side all the time. Everything he said, you could perfectly, if you were on his team, interpret it one way, and on the other side, you could perfectly interpret it the other way. It was just perfectly triggering every time, and there was just so much, just enough gray to get by with everything. It was uncanny.
I think Jesus does that.
It's
really
very
well
similar. Yeah,
That provides like a satisfying order to those individuals in my brain for some reason.
Yeah.
It's like, no, okay, that makes sense now. Thank you for making it sense for me.
Yeah. That was delicious.
all right, cool. You want to wrap it there then?
I don't know. It's pretty delicious.
All right.
Yeah, I'm pretty satisfied.
You got your dessert?
And yeah.
All right. I like leaving you satisfied. Well,
satisfied customer.
Shut up.
Shit.
We should also wrap. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah. That was good, guys. Very nice. Join us in the Discord. Curious you guys' thoughts on the segment today, and in particular, Christopher Columbus, good or evil. Let us know. All right. Catch you guys in the next episode. Peace.
Peace.